Welcome. This is the Fourth Ward annual meeting. I'm Ray Bushman, and also here with me is my fellow alderman, Eileen Luby Weber. Again, welcome. I would have loved to begin this with a greeting of good to see you all, but unfortunately, like last year, COVID-19 precludes us from meeting in person. This is my fifth ward meeting. So I did have the opportunity and pleasure of seeing you folks live for my first three ward meetings. This is Eileen's second ward meeting, so she still has not had that luxury to enjoy it, but I'm looking forward to next year when we can have that opportunity of meeting personally. In any event, we'll do our best to tell you what's happening here in Lake Forest, and more importantly, provide you the opportunity, our constituents, to ask questions and hopefully get answers. I should add, to make sure we can provide all the answers, we do have here in the Zoom conference the city staff, and we're going to be looking to them as necessary to help in answering any questions. Let's look at the agenda. This is a fairly simple agenda, but it's one that the first four items we're anticipating taking about 45 minutes, give or take. And then we will look to have an open Q&A. And for that, we're more than willing to look to stay as long, but we're targeting about 45 minutes for that. So that's why this ward meeting we're looking at from 7 to 8:30. But we're going to do a little further introductions. Then we're going to discuss what's new and what's happening in Lake Forest. We'll discover finances, the dollar and cents that we deal with regularly here, and some projects and initiatives. With that, let me go into the introductions. To give you a little more background of myself, my wife and I moved into Lake Forest in 1995. We're my youngest of five children, attended 4 years at Lake Forest High School. And my daughter, eldest, moved back here into Lake Forest. And two of my grandchildren went to Country Day School for the full 9-year segment here in Lake Forest. I became involved in city government in 2003, being appointed to the Building Review Board. I served 6 years there, including as chairman. Then I served 6 years on the legal committee, with 5 of those years as chairman of the legal committee. In 2016, I was appointed to fill a vacancy in the Fourth Ward Alderman chair, and continued to serve there, being elected in 2017, again in 2019, and finally this year being elected. And I say finally because we do have 3-year term limits, and this is my final term. To give you a little more background, I was born and raised in Chicago, recognizing we have many folks here born and raised by generations that live in Lake Forest, and I really cherish their memories and their longevity here with the city. And I'll let Eileen elaborate on that a little bit more. After attending Lane Tech and Loyola University in Chicago, I graduated from the University of Illinois Law School, started practicing at Schiff, Hart & Waite, a Chicago law firm, although they do have now an office in Lake Forest. Then I went on to practice in-house, as we say it, with a Fortune 500 company, which went through various business names and business changes, went from division VP to group VP to finally corporate VP, retiring when the company was acquired as the general counsel. I continue to be active with FINRA, which is the Financial Regulatory Authority, as an arbitrator in resolving disputes within the securities industry. Besides continuing trying to be the best I can as a public servant here in the city. Let me now turn it over to Eileen.
Thank you, Ray, and good evening, everyone. It's been my pleasure to serve you as 4th Ward Alderman. Oops, excuse me. We have a little interruption. Why don't I start with my two boys?
Timing's impeccable.
Oh my, excuse me. Oh, I'm on live. I'm just starting. Oh, I'm starting. Thank you. Please excuse me. I am a lifelong resident of Lake Forest. My husband, Brian, and I have lived in the 4th Ward now for 8 years. We own a condominium at Amberley Woods in the 3rd Ward. As I mentioned, I was born and raised. I attended St. Mary's School, went to Carmel Catholic for high school. I went to Purdue University where I received my degree in horticulture, production, and marketing. I then went to Lake Forest Graduate School of Management while managing my father's business, Lake Forest Flowers, where I now am a partner with him there. I'm also a floral educator. I teach floral design. I do a lot of plant consulting as well for indoor plant. So I have a real wide background in terms of communication and marketing, retail, science, and I just really enjoy Lake Forest. As you've just heard, my two boys, I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. They are, we came in from flag football. It's late, it's almost bedtime, and clearly they don't want to stop the Paw Patrol. So please excuse that interruption. The door is now locked to the office. A little bit of a history of my engagement with the city. As many of you know, my father was an alderman for Lake Forest for 8 years. So growing up, I watched a lot of meetings. I have attended dozens of these meetings over the years. But myself, I served on the Lake Forest caucus. I was a caucus president. I served on several working groups, both for the Waukegan and Everett Road corridor, as well as the Route 60 corridor. I was the Amberley Woods Condominium Association president. I've served on the Lake Forest Lake Bluff Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. And then recently, before becoming alderman, I was on the Cemetery Commission. So just a little bit of background there, but my goal as alderman is to be accessible and to represent all of you, my constituents, and make our city the most wonderful and beautiful place it can be. So why don't we go ahead on the next slide? We're going to do a little bit of audience introductions. We really miss not seeing everyone in person who's with us, and we thought that a little bit of interaction would help us to gauge who's been to these before and who hasn't. With that in mind, let's get a sense who's on the call. I'm going to go ahead, if you can. Alderman Bushman's going to ask the question to the group, and if your answer is yes, if you can push the raise hand button on your Zoom menu bar, and then I'll report the total to the group.
Okay.
So go ahead, Ray.
I promise not to ask too difficult questions. And again, we'd appreciate anyone who's participating to simply hit the raise hand button if it's a yes answer to the question. The first question is, have you moved to Lake Forest recently in the last 18 months? Raise your hand if you're new to the city within the last 18 months.
Great. Looks like we have one. Welcome to Lake Forest.
Bunch of old timers here, huh? Good, good. Next question is, how many people in this ward meeting have lived in Lake Forest for at least 5 years, 5 or more years? Again, if you'd be so kind to hit the yes button. The raise hand button for a yes answer.
Great. So let's see here. We've got about 20 on the call.
Okay, very good. Hopefully they had an opportunity, but we'll come to that question after this one. One more question on longevity here at Lake Forest. How many have lived in Lake Forest for 30 or more years? I know I cannot raise my hand on that. Eileen could, but although you must have squeaked in with your age.
Thank you, Ray. I appreciate that.
How many people have lived in Lake Forest for 30 or more years? Again, if you'd hit the raise hand button, which is a yes answer.
We've got 12.
Very good. So my last question is, how many people at this ward meeting are attending for the first time a ward meeting. So if this is your first ward meeting, please again, hit the raise hand button for a yes answer.
And we have 3. So welcome.
You're welcome, very much so. Eileen, as we go forward, how do people ask a question?
Thank you so much. So there are a few different ways to ask a question or make a comment. We've got the Q&A feature on Zoom, and we're going to encourage you to type the questions in during the meeting, but you don't, so that way you don't have to wait till the end. And if it's something that's pertinent to the topic we're on, we'll try to address it at that time. And then if you have a question during the Q&A, please use the raise hand function and we'll bring you on. Thank you.
Very good. Let's do a little city overview. This is always good, whether you're a new person or whether you've been here 5 years or 30 years. It's good to have a little refresher as to, how the city operates. And the best place to start is with our motto, our slogan, our statement that we're committed to. That is to be the best managed, fiscally responsible, and appealing community, and promote a spirit of trust, respect, and citizen involvement. It's a simple statement in a way, but it carries a lot of weight and importance. And this is one way where we look for citizen involvement through the ward meetings. Again, we thank everyone who is now attending and participating. Again, it's something that we want to promote and encourage. And I'll cover that more when we get into how we operate with our boards and commissions and caucus. Technically, we have what's called a council manager form of government. The city council is the legislative and policy-making body and includes the mayor and 2 aldermen from each of the city's 4 wards. As I mentioned, Eileen and I are your aldermen for the 4th ward, and you see the plot to the right of the city's boundaries showing the 4th ward there. Basically, our ward has Route 41 on the east, our city boundaries on the south, the tollway on the west, and Route 60 on the north, other than the Conway subdivision is carved out. As for managing the city on a day-to-day basis, that we leave to city staff, and city staff is headed by the city manager, Jason Wisha, who hopefully later can help us answer some of the Q&A questions, and we'll introduce him then. The city is also fortunate to have more than 125 residents generously contribute their time and expertise each year to serve on the city's various boards, commissions, and committees. It's very important as to who we are and how we operate. Volunteers are very important. And guess what? We have help in getting our volunteers and selecting our volunteers, getting the best volunteers with another volunteer organization called the caucus. The caucus is made up of 9 residents from each of the 4 wards, plus an executive committee. And again, it's people willing to volunteer to join the caucus and do the job of helping us get the volunteers for the boards, commissions, the council, and even the mayor. So we really want to encourage everyone to consider either volunteering for the caucus or for one of the boards or commissions or the council itself. We're only as good as our volunteers. Very important to keep in mind. And the best way I'd suggest to do that is to go online, go on the Caucus, Lake Forest Caucus website, and they have forms to fill out to make requests and to indicate your interest. Or feel free to call Eileen or I if you want to discuss anything like that too. But again, thank all those who have volunteered, and thank you for considering your service by volunteering to the city. Now, the city itself is a full service city. It's amazing that, all the range of services we provide as a city. As briefly noted here, we have Parks and Recs as part of us. It's not a separate entity. Fire, police, public works, and many more are included under the city umbrella. Each of these major departments, like finance, public works, parks and recs, human resources, are headed by directors with their staff reporting to them, and they in turn reporting to the city manager, along with the chief of our fire department and the chief of our police department. Eileen, what's new here in the city?
Thank you, Ray. There's so much new that's happening in the city of Lake Forest. We want to just touch on that. We did have our first question come in, and we're just going to hold off on that, Stephanie, for a little bit further in the presentation. So thank you so much for sending that in. So what's new in the city? The city is continuing to find new innovative ways to serve our residents and improve efficiencies. The Lake Forest Now app is a wonderful free mobile app where residents can report problems, find city information, get notifications about activities and events. Actually, I wonder if we could do a show of hands. Can we do a show of hands to see who has downloaded this app out of our attendees? If you have downloaded the app, could you raise your hand? Great. So we've got 13 people. That's about half our group. Wonderful. Well, for those of you who have not yet downloaded the app, I highly recommend it. It's things like seeing a pothole during the winter months. You can go right on and report it with a map, and it tells the city staff exactly where that is. And it really makes things efficient versus trying to call or email and a lot of back and forth. If you haven't been on the city's website, major website improvements have been made. It's much more user-friendly, especially in the search bar. I find that to be so helpful to bring up quickly information for us. They've also been focusing on, goodness gracious tonight, we're focusing on infrastructure improvements, especially the ones that manage stormwater. And you'll see some of that with the projects that we've had, Baroque and et cetera, as well as incorporating some of our environmental sustainability practices within those. So we'll be talking more about that. And we have Dana Olson, who's been our communications and marketing director. She's doing a fabulous job along with Mike Strong and our other staff members to help position Lake Forest as one of the best places to live. Alderman Jennifer Karras has done a wonderful job with the Lake Forest Love blog as well. So many things to be communicated, and I hope you are getting all of those different facets access to you. We'll move on to the next slide with restaurants and businesses. We've had several around town, including, we'll start it off in the 4th Ward. So the Forester Hotel, I guess it's technically the 3rd Ward up there, but I feel like it's close to home. With the Oak and Bistro. And then right heart of the 4th Ward Business District, we've got Everett Farms and the Station, both at the Settlers Square. And we also have Donati's and Jefe's Tacos in Westwood Square. Lake Colonial is going to be opening up in April at the old Market House location. So we've got lots of restaurants coming in. Ray, do we want to bring on Kathy to talk any further about that, or should we see if there's any additional questions?
I see we're getting some questions on the corner of Waukegan and Everett, and that is a topic that we will be covering later. So maybe we can cover that topic then.
Great, we've got a slide on that. So thank you to those who've sent in questions. We will get to that moving forward. We'll move on to the next slide here with return of community events. So we all know that with the pandemic, we had a lot of disappointments, and we weren't able to build that community spirit that Lake Forest is so known for. But back this year, we've got the Lake Forest Festival and Fireworks, where we gathered at Deer Path Park with music and a wonderful fireworks show. We also had our Lake Forest Day Parade and Carnival, which is always the first Wednesday in August. So those of you who are new to Lake Forest, please mark your calendar, and you don't want to head out of town for that one. You definitely want to stay in. And new this year, we had the Lake Forest Music Festival, which was held in the parking lot behind City Hall. There were several bands and music and tastings, and it was really, really well attended. We also had, I know that Ray was excited about bringing another event to the West Lake Forest train station, and that was the Lake Forest Then and Now Auto Show held just a few weeks ago. It was a rainy day, but wonderful attendance. I was there with my kids. My father had a car out there, and just seeing the camaraderie and the spirit of our community come back alive was heartwarming.
Yeah, it was a great opportunity for something local to our fourth ward to have it. And obviously we had a lot of outsiders there. Weather did not cooperate. And again, much thanks goes to the Lake Forest Lake Forest Lake Bluff Chamber of Commerce and Joanna Rolick. And again, thank you very much for helping to do that.
We've got a question that's come in about a rumor of a steakhouse coming to Lake Forest. Jason, is that something we can answer at this time? I'm not aware of anything.
Well, I wonder if it's La Coloniale.
They're Vietnamese. Is that what you're?
Vietnamese, but I wonder if that's what they're thinking of.
My suspicion is no, that's probably not what they're referencing, although
okay.
The resident certainly can, yeah, he just clarified. Yeah, I think there has been some initial interest conveyed, but nothing specific, nothing that can be shared. I don't know if Community Development Director Kathy Zerniak has anything additional to add on that.
No specific steakhouse. There's been a lot of interest in various restaurants.
Thank you, Kathy. We'll move on to what are our upcoming holiday events that are sponsored for the Lake Forest Parks and Recreation. So many things coming up. Our annual tree lighting ceremony is back in Market Square, which kicks off the holiday season the Friday after Thanksgiving. We have a couple other events. We've got, as well as the Lake Forest Light Up the Parks. That was new last year because of COVID, hoping to spread out the community spirit around town. So I'm wonderfully excited that we're going to continue that. We've got Zoom with Santa, the Winter Dance Spectacular, and more. So you can see the dates there on the screen with several different things, even a drive-through Santa visit. So I hope you will get engaged with that. The Lake Forest Station pop-up shop is also returning this holiday season, which supports several of our non-for-profit organizations and features a number of different limited edition Lake Forest merchandise. So you can check those items off your Christmas list and do your shopping there and support all of our local businesses. I encourage everyone to go ahead and get a login at the lakeforestparksandrec.com so you can register for some of these more specific events for kids. Moving on, I'm going to jump on into environmental sustainability. I have the pleasure of serving on that committee this year, along with Chairman Alderman Rummel and Alderman Preschlack. And the role of the Environmental Sustainability Committee is to provide policy guidance and input on capital and operating budget initiatives that forward our city's history of proactive environmental and eco-conscious planning. So when we look at these projects, we're working with city staff. Mike Strong's played a wonderful advisory role as well with our committee and keeping us moving in the right direction. And as we've only formed just a couple of years ago. But we look at these projects and we look at sources. We've got a picture up here of solar panels on a building. That's something that we're looking at. We, through a lot of discussion, and we worked with the sustainability consultant from Mist Environmental, we identified 4 priorities. The first being public education. And Dana Olson has played a wonderful role with that. Communication efforts. So again, through the app, through the blog, through our new e-news, through our redesigned dialogue that's coming out. We've got this rooftop solar. We're analyzing our community-wide emissions. And we are looking at ravine maintenance and management. It was identified that we have so many people who are new to Lake Forest. I want to say it's 1 out of every 3 households. they may not have lived on a ravine and may not understand the maintenance that goes on with those. And so we're hoping to continue our outreach program and preserve our beautiful committee. I'm just checking here on some questions. We've got a question. What improvements have been made to the city's infrastructure this summer? I'm wondering if maybe we can get a clarifier, anything in particular with the infrastructure.
I will note that obviously several high profile projects should be included later in your presentation, but we can provide some additional examples once you've concluded with those slides about
Great.
the projects that were underway this year.
Excellent. And there's another question come in, we'll try to address later. And why is sustainability landscaping not identified as a priority? Great question. It's not identified as a top 4 priority at this moment, but it's definitely on our priority list. I also have the privilege of serving as chair of the Civic Beautification Committee, in which I'm engaging with members of the 4 Lake Forest Garden Clubs. And this has been a topic that came up at our last meeting, or I should say 2 meetings ago, where we're perhaps looking at more natural landscapes, converting some of the more regularly mowed areas. So that is on the list, and I encourage you to stay active with us. And then thank you for the question regarding storm sewer. We'll get to that. Questions come in, is residential roof solar likely in the future? It's definitely something that the committee is looking into now and seeing perhaps in the future when a roof needs to be replaced, perhaps on a city-owned building. Can we incorporate solar at that time? So thank you, Bob. Let's move on. Recycling, near and dear to my heart. You know, with little kids, it's important to instill these things early into their lives. So the Rethink Recycling campaign is the education campaign to reduce our contamination. It was funded by the Lake Forest Garden Club. Thank you to any of those on the call who are part of that club. And the goal was to reduce the curbside contamination from 25% to 10%. We have reduced it down to, I believe, 20%. Dan Martin, if you can maybe just confirm that number if you're available. Is he on?
Sure. Currently, we're standing at about 18% contamination.
Oh, great.
Down from 25%. Yeah, the goal is 10%. So we're still moving along, trying to make that goal. So beat that goal.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that number.
Yeah, that's something to keep in mind. We still need to do more in that area to do it right, because I know when we looked at it initially and got the report from the processor that, you know, we were putting in as much contamination as anyone else, and we pay for that. It costs us. So if we can get our recyclable stream what it should be, it's a saving to the environment and a saving financially.
Exactly right. Thank you for bringing that up. Our city staff had a couple of interns, they're pictured here on the screen, that actually conducted curbside cart audits. And they also, which I was so pleased working with Dan Martin, he had them actually reach out at several different summer camps over the summer, and I connected with him about that as well. And they were able to present to the students there. And, you know, again, starting at a young age, I think it's important for all of us. If you're not able to wash out that peanut butter jar, don't put it in the recycling bin. Also being careful with a lot of single-use plastics, things like those grocery bags. You now can recycle those single-use plastics actually at our recycling center. So think about that. Let's try to keep the trash and the waste out of our recycling and save all of us some money. Bart the Cart also was in the parade this year. Just circling back, the interns had over 1,300 audits completed with an average 18% contamination rate. So keep up the good work. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Moving on, the mobile app. I just want to check our questions here. Good, which looks like we've caught up. We've had over 2,000 downloads since launching in February under the guidance here of our IT director, Jim Shaw, And I believe Joe Gabansky's in there too, working on this. It's really the go-to place for information. Many of us are on our phones. We have it with us all the time. Download the app. It's really an aggregator acting as a launch pad for applications that are of interest. And you can customize what type of notifications you get. There's a little picture there of the home screen. Do you need to get a permit for something? Do you need to report a problem? Do you need to pay a mobile payment? So lots and lots of things on there. I love it when I get notifications of these meetings. I have them all over my calendar, but even still, it helps to have another touch point. So you can request a special garbage pickup, register for classes through the Parks and Rec Department, and so much more. So I encourage all of you to take a look at that. You can download it both from the Apple Store and Google Play. Moving on, we also have the Click Fix, our citizen service requests service software that was implemented to provide an online portal for residents to submit service requests. So talked about that, potholes, garbage pickups, fallen tree limbs, particularly after some of these nasty storms we've had. So that's also in the mobile app and on the website. You can do both. You can easily enter in the information about your request, and in a few clicks, choose to submit it with either your contact information, or you can do it anonymously. We've had over 1,500 requests have been resolved, and it really is an efficiency for our staff as well, because when you put in a certain problem or issue, it goes directly to that department, and so they're able to look at it quickly and address it quickly. So far, the most popular have been sanitation pickups and fallen tree limbs. So really, really helpful information. Let's continue with a little bit about voting updates. Due to the delay in the 2020 census, the 2022 general primary has been moved from March 15th to June 28th. Early voting will begin in June. So again, take a look at your summer schedule for travel, because you want to make sure that you get your vote in, and more information will be available early next year. So again, just mark those dates on your calendar. It's always important to have a voice both in your local elections as well as the bigger, wider governmental elections. And I now have the pleasure of turning over the real thick and heavy discussion slides to my wonderful partner, Ray Bushman. Ray, take it away.
Well, thank you. It may be heavy, but it's also in great shape too. But I'm going to talk about finances, and let's do an overview. And as I said, the city's finances are in great shape. Hopefully it's not too much overweight. But in terms of COVID-19, which is obviously impacted a lot of municipalities. Again, good news, it has had very limited impact on the city budget. When it hit in 2020, we did do a revision to our budget for FY21, and it showed out to be quite well done, that we still exceeded our expectations through FY21 in terms of our budget and expenses. The city strives to have a balanced budget every year, and no different this year for fiscal year 2022. I should note when I talk about these fiscal years that our fiscal year is not on a calendar year basis. Rather, it runs from May 1, 2021 to April 30th, 2022. So we are currently in fiscal year 2022. More good news is we continue to rate a AAA bond rating with Moody's Investor Services. That was recently updated and confirmed. It applies to the city's outstanding debt, but it is a credit to the value that the city places on fiscal management and how we're able to get the highest rating possible for municipal bonds. And there's a side issue, again, a good, nice, happy news issue. We've been proactive at monitoring the bond market, looking for opportunities to reduce our debt burden. And we had great success in taking advantage of the low interest rate environment that we've been enjoying. In 2019, we refinanced those bonds we were able to at a very attractive interest rate and saved $1.3 million over the life of the bonds. Other bonds now then became eligible for refinancing this past August, and we again went into the market. We didn't quite break the 1% interest rate, but we came damn close to it. But we did save the taxpayers $1.6 million in debt service over the life of those bonds. So great results, and very much appreciate the work of our finance department and the director, Elizabeth Holland. We continue to maintain strong financial reserves to deal with the potential unknowns where we would have a significant disruption to our revenue stream or require significant expenses to deal with what we never know is going to happen in the future. The city continues with a proactive strategy to address public safety pension costs. Certainly all of us in the state of Illinois read many articles about how things are so bad with pension costs, particularly in the public safety area. Several years ago, soon after I joined the council, we became very active in coming up with a strategy to address public safety pension costs. And we decided on a scheme to fund it more upfront in excess of the minimum required. By doing so, the city has significantly reduced the pension burden in future years. It's so-called leveling of the pension burden. So we're not looking at any one generation to carry the onus burden of funding pensions, but having the opportunity of spreading it along. And we're ultimately seeking to get to what we call a rolling 15-year amortization program with our pension costs. So it's something that we've paid a lot of attention to and been proactive. And I think we're particularly compared to just about anyone else in a very good position. We also are looking for the current fiscal year to spend some $12.7 million in capital assets that will be covered a little later in our presentation. In terms of our FY22 budget, which again, we're halfway through the budget. As you see from the two pie charts, we are looking for a balanced budget with basically $92.5 million in revenue, projected revenue, and $91.8 million in budgeted expenses. And these charts break out and depict the revenue and expenses by type. Just to note a couple prominent aspects of our revenue, 1/3 of the city's annual revenue comes from property taxes. And on the expense side, personnel related expenses account for 42.2% of citywide expenses. One factor on the revenue side that I'd like to touch on a little bit more relates to our real estate market. The city does impose a, next slide, please. The city does impose a real estate transfer tax of $4 per $1,000 sale price on property sold in Lake Forest. And the revenue is used to fund capital improvements in the city over a 5-year capital improvement plan. I think much of what has been happening is attributable to the pandemic effects, where people are looking and not needing to be as close to the city as in the past for their jobs. Combined with low interest rates, we've seen a sharp increase in the sales of residential property. That translates into two things. One, We're seeing new residents come here, and we'll certainly welcome to them. And also this realization of additional funds from the transfer tax revenue. In terms of the citywide expenses by our different functions that we have here, here's a pie chart that breaks out, gets very busy, the different areas where our expenses fall in. The bottom two, police to the left, fire to the right. I don't know why fire's in red, but it is. But then we have all the other elements that go into the expenses. This reinforces something I said earlier when we're a full service city, looking at whether it's the water, sanitary, the golf, the cemetery, the parks, forestry, the sanitation, the streets, public works, buildings, debt service, CROIA, on and on. We do a lot here at the city, and obviously that shows here in needing to fund these different functions. Where do your property taxes go? Here's a pie chart. Now this is something if you own real estate here in Illinois, Lake County, Lake Forest, your property tax bill, you obviously pay attention to the bottom line number, what check you need to cut and what you need to pay. But in terms of percentages where it goes, 22% of that goes to the city. Other parts go to Lake County, library, but the biggest portion, little over 50% of your property taxes go to schools, both the high school district and elementary school districts. In terms of city finances, let's see. Next. Oh, financial transparency. That's what we want to cover next. Very important topic. Because when we talk about city finances, we're really talking about your dollars. And we recognize that these are your tax dollars, and you're entitled to know where they're going, how we're spending your money. So the city council and staff have strived to go beyond transparency with the financial information. Rather than simply make available the information in the public domain, the city works hard to make that information understandable and easily digestible. This goes a lot to what Eileen said earlier about the efforts to go into the different applications and websites and apps to try and get that information available. The city's website does include a financial transparency portal specifically for this purpose, for this residents to view a significant amount of the financial data. We recently published our second budget in brief and popular annual financial report, things that are going to much more depth than I've covered here. So if you're looking for that depth, there is a wonderful resource to have. And it also provides some interactive charts and graphs that allow you to do even a deeper dive into the city's financial information. With that, Eileen, back to you. You're on mute.
You're right. Thank you, Ray. I muted from my children screaming in the background. They don't want to go to bed. So that's a real downside to the Zoom stuff. I'm at home Zooming in with you all. But thank you, Ray, for getting us through that thick financial information. So our FY 2022 budget continues a tradition of investing each year in the city's capital assets. So there were a couple questions that popped up about these type of investments. Most notably, our Burr Oak storm sewer, as you can see here, was $4.3 million, and we received a grant that helped save money. It would have increased it to $5.2 million. So We did hire a firm that helps us with the grant writing and application process. Our city staff has been wonderful doing that, but this takes a little bit, hopefully, load off their back so we can continue to deep dive for more opportunities to save money. We also have, in terms of road, sidewalk, and curbs, you can see that storm sewer lining and improvements, bridge maintenance, Forest Park Beach and Bluff, water and sanitary sewer, and capital equipment. So you can see that and see some notable grants received. The city maintains a wide range of capital assets from the water and sanitary sewer infrastructure to Forest Park Beach and Bluff. And then what we've been doing is the design work first in one fiscal year, allowing then for a better, more informed estimate of construction costs that are then included in the next fiscal year budget. So each year, the city council and staff prepare a 5-year capital improvement program. And we are regularly finding ways to obtain outside funding to reduce costs. So you can see again, the over $885,000 in grants to cover. So we've got our Waukegan Everett Road intersection, the Lake Woodbine Bridge, and we have our recycling campaign as well as landscape enhancements as part of the Deer Path Route 41 project. Jason, do you see anything specific in our questions so far that we should address now, or should we keep moving along?
There is a question that just came in about the other section there, and I'm going to ask Public Works Director Mike Thomas to come up on the screen to talk about perhaps that, and then any other notable projects that he wants to highlight from the current fiscal year.
Great.
Thank you, City Manager Wisha. Good evening, Alderman Bushman, Alderman Weber. The capital improvements for this year, as Alderman Weber noted, have been numerous. We have done not only physical projects, but we've done a lot of designs and studies as we prepare for the upcoming 5 years of capital improvements. And again, it's something that we have embarked on over the past couple of years, and it allows us to truly hone in on cost benefits and really hone in on costs for the actual projects themselves. Beach study, the bluff as well. We had a full design on the bluff repair. Tuck Pointy Dickinson Hall, we had a Ringwood Ravine repair, which is very significant on Ringwood Road. Our annual resurfacing project, street resurfacing. We also resurfaced the Old Elm parking lot at Old Elm and Sheridan Road. Down at the water plant, our 2 intakes, our 42 and 24-inch intakes, we cleaned those. We did our annual storm sewer and sanitary sewer lining. As we noted, we had some design work as well on Lake Woodbine Bridge, a phase 1 design. We have a couple of intersections, Wesley and Waukegan, as well as Everett and Waukegan. Those both are having what we refer to as a phase 2 design, where we put together the final design drawings so we can pursue grants. We again had additional work on our water main valve repairs, pressure sensors. Our Parks and Rec department is currently working on Veterans Park at Deer Path and Green Bay. And then finally, we still have got Burr Oak up on the 3rd Ward on Northwestern Avenue near the condominiums. That is going to be a large storm sewer project that we are going to hopefully embark on later in the current fiscal year. And then we have the pedestrian bridge at Illinois, right near the Gordon Community Center. Again, that will probably happen later in the year. So a lot of items, things are busy, but we're very happy with all the attention and dollars that we're putting into the city's infrastructure.
Thank you, Director Thomas. I appreciate that highlight more specifically for our residents. Moving on to city projects, I wanted to just quickly mention again before we jump in about some of the more specific projects that you can find all of the information on the construction projects in the neighborhood on the city's construction projects interactive map. So again, I'm just highlighting another accessibility and recent IT enhancement to our website at cityoflakeforest.com/construction projects. So you can click on there and get a lot of information. Also, the weekly newsletter that comes out If you're not already registered for that, please sign up online because you can get highlights each week with some of the city projects of things happening. So lots of different ways to gain information. I'm going to now turn it over to Ray for one of the most notable projects connecting quote unquote east to west down Deer Path Road.
Thank you, Eileen. Eileen's referring to the intersection of Deer Path and Route 41, a project that's been very visible and I suspect disruptive for a few of us. I do want to note that this is not a city project. The project is being handled totally by what we call IDOT. That's the Illinois Department of Transportation. So it's a state-run project, state fully funded project. We're not putting any dollars in, but obviously we're feeling the impact and hopefully we will see the benefit. The benefit is one for any of us that have lived in Lake Forest for more than a year, realize that we do get flooding on Deer Path under 41. And this project is intended to mitigate that flooding. Unfortunately, it's going to take a lot of work. Fortunately, we're more than halfway through. We're about 59% through the project. We've already completed the construction of the 2 detention ponds that were over on our golf course. The landscaping of that area, including environmentally sensitive landscaping, has been completed or near completion. The pump station building site has been excavated and shored up. The utility conflicts have been reconfigured and relocated. And stormwater installations that support it have pretty much been completed. Now, work still remains. There's resurfacing work needed on Deer Path Road, obviously. Further landscaping restoration is needed along Deer Path. The pump station building still itself needs to be constructed, and then there will be landscape restoration around it. We expect construction to be completed by December of 2022. So still a ways to go. Appreciate everyone's patience. I know staff has been working very hard, very diligently to keep the neighbors aware of what's going on, and also those of us that traverse that area to give us as much advance warning as we can and as much preparation to adjust as appropriate. And IDOT is pretty well coordinating their efforts with our staff. So we appreciate that and look forward to a better and safer intersection time to come. More not so good news about that intersection is the what we call the Pedestrian Bridge at that intersection. I think of it as a bike path, something I use as a bike path, but sad to say there's going to be more disruption forthcoming. This is just a heads up. It's down the road, but Commonwealth Edison owns and maintains this pedestrian bike bridge over Deer Path, just east of Route 41. And unfortunately, the structure is dated, doesn't support Con Ed's equipment anymore, so it needs to be replaced because they still access their power lines with the use of that bridge and requires heavy equipment besides us bicyclists and pedestrians that use it. Please note that this is not a city project, it's Commonwealth Edison, again, doing the replacement and paying the total cost. But in order to replace the bridge, here's the bad news. Deer Path will be completely closed during demolition and installation of the new bridge deck. Now, before you go too much, the work's expected to require closure for a total of 2 weeks for demolition, plus another 2 weeks for installation. We anticipate the work to start as early as March of 2022, potentially ending by August of 2022. But these dates are very preliminary and it's all subject to change. But let's keep in mind that If this has a potential for impacting you, stay observant as the news comes forward. But let's look down the road. Hopefully another year or two, we'll all be happy it's over with, and we can have a great intersection there and a great bike path. Eileen, to you.
Sure. There was a question that came up about a little bit about pedestrian friendly paths and bike paths. So just to highlight the Route 60 pedestrian path. The Route 60 path involves constructing a 10-foot pedestrian path along the north side of Route 60 from Academy Drive to Field Drive. In June of 2021, the city received a $520,000 IDOT grant award for project design and construction to cover about 80% of the project costs. Well done. The city is currently coordinating grant agreements with IDOT to proceed with the design. The project design will take about 6 to 9 months to complete, and then the design will need to be reviewed by IDOT prior to construction, and then IDOT review can take another 6 to 9 months. While IDOT review adds to the timeline, it is necessary to receive these grant funds, and it's really, really wonderful that we have the ability to take advantage of that. Which is, again, one kind of step closer to connecting on the other side of the tollway there, all of the Lake County Forest Preserve paths. So hopefully in our future, we'll see that come to fruition. I'm now going to turn it back over to Ray to talk about Forest Park Bluff and Beach.
Yes, let's visit the beach. And I do note that we're running a little beyond our time, and hopefully everyone will bear with us. But I may and ask Eileen also to maybe be a little more summary fashion in the next slides, but some of them are very important. But for the bluff and the beach, as you know, a little history here, we completed construction of a retaining wall for the South Beach access road back in 2017. And surprise, after some heavy storms in the summer of 2018, we had a bluff collapse that blocked our North Beach access road. And this affected the beach operations in 2018 and 2019, completed at the end of the summer in 2019 by adding fill and building a new access road and doing ravine restoration. Unfortunately, we still have challenges and risks at the beach area. Historic high levels of the water, Lake Michigan and all the Great Lakes and some of the large storms that have come through over the last few years have inflicted damage on bluffs and beaches in the area. And unfortunately, we're not immune to that. We have taken certain steps to minimize it. But the important point here is we're continuing to look at it, to monitor it, to come up with a maintenance plan, to do what we can to protect this jewel for us going forward and for our future generations. With that, another project I think has been impacted by weather. Eileen?
Sure. So we're looking at the Burr Oak area storm sewer improvement project. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but essentially we were awarded a grant that will fund half the cost of construction, which is wonderful. And it's a major project component includes the storm trap detention vault under Western Avenue. So a really, really big project. And it was listed in 2019 as the highest priority stormwater improvement project. So each year, these different stormwater projects are evaluated and ranked, and then we're able to allocate funding to move forward. And if anyone has any further questions on that, let's take that in the Q&A just to keep things moving along. Ray, do you want to jump on annual street resurfacing?
Yeah, this is an area, it maybe doesn't have quite the impact significance of these other topics, but it's a recurring thing and something, it affects us day in and day out. And I know Eileen and I have at times received calls from citizens complaining about streets, potholes and whatnot. But I do want to emphasize that this is an area the city does pay attention to. We do have an outside contractor that conducts an evaluation of our streets every 3 years. They do have a rating system. We feel that over the course of the last 10 years or so, we continue to improve on how we are rated with our streets. And the important point here to remember is if you do see a problem, the best avenue is click the fix, as Eileen talked about, or just call City Hall, or you can call us, but we're going to refer you over to the staff, Public Works. And the more they hear about what the problems are and what they need to do, the better it's going to be for them to be able to respond to it. And as we say, staff uses this report to outline their annual street researching program, but they also listen to the citizens and understand better where the problems lie. In terms of the resurfacing that we're looking at for the upcoming year, a little busy chart here, but in FY22, as you see, there's 4 streets that we're looking to do some resurfacing. That's separate and apart from pothole fillings or minor work in the streets. But this is an ongoing effort, and it's something that we do pay attention to. The next topic is one that we have received some questions on, and maybe need to spend a little time because of its importance to us in the 4th Ward, and recognize it is a question of much interest to our people. This project involves intersection improvements at the intersection of Everett and Waukegan Road. I can say now versus prior times in planning that we are actively looking at trying to improve what probably is the biggest headache at this intersection, namely getting a right turn lane for westbound Everett. We're proceeding with design efforts. We're looking to get grant funding. It won't be an inexpensive project. So that is something that's continuing on. Unfortunately, it's going to continue to be a lengthy process. It can't happen overnight. Won't even happen over probably the next fiscal year or 2, especially if we're going to get state involvement and state funding. That always adds another year to the project, but please bear with us. Certainly, hopefully that is another intersection we can look to longer term for a nice improvement to it. Eileen, another intersection of interest to our folks?
Yeah, Ray, I'm just going to step back just to follow up on your slide. There was a question regarding an update on the development of the property at the southeast corner of Waukegan and Everett. And at this time, there's been no permits pulled for construction yet on that site, but there is been a plan design that was approved for a coffee shop standalone in a 3-story medical office building. So nothing yet in terms of breaking ground efforts. So moving on to
maybe there's, because it's something that I wouldn't be surprised there'll be more questions on it, as long as we're touching upon this intersection and the southeast corner. I know Kathy Cerniak, our director of community development, stays in close contact with the owner of the property, and the owner of the property is a relatively new owner who owns that medical building a little bit to the east on Everett. So it's a larger parcel he has there now. And as we talked about, we're looking to put in a medical building, and then at the corner a coffee shop with drive-through. But Director Cerniak, can you give us an update on where it stands? Obviously, we're still looking at a vacant piece of property there.
Thank you, Alderman Bushman. Director Cerniak. Oh, I think she's on.
I am on.
All right.
Partially on. We have talked with Mr. Iosu, the owner of the property, recently, and he is still working to line up tenants, but still does plan to proceed with the development.
Thank you. let's continue on with
Yeah.
Waukegan and Wesley intersection improvements. And we had a couple of questions on this, so I will address those and bring on city staff as necessary. This project involves the intersection to improve safety and traffic flow. We are proceeding with design efforts, seeking grant funding for the construction end. We don't really have a timeline yet. That's going to follow the grant program requirements. But the current construction cost is around $2.9 million. And in looking at our questions here, we had one on what's the rationale. A couple questions. Let's see. Can you elaborate on the Waukegan Wesley intersection? So hopefully I've answered a couple questions there. And what is the rationale for the right turn lane? There isn't much traffic there. Thanks for mentioning that. I'm going to bring on, is Byron available, City Manager Wisha, to just elaborate any further on that?
Good evening, Byron Coots here, Superintendent of Engineering.
Hi, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good evening. So it is a combination of intersection safety, crash data, as well as improving traffic flows, especially during high peak times, such as when there are sports events at the West Campus there. At this point, we aren't really committed to any construction funding. What we're really trying to do is perform what we call the phase 2, which I think was referred to earlier, which is kind of an IDOT term for kind of final design, or more than preliminary design, that is. And by doing that, basically, we'll be able to apply for additional funding, federal funding. And oftentimes that federal funding is 80-20 split, meaning that we only pay 20%. So that's really the rationale with at least completing the design, which we're working on right now. The crashes in particular are related really to the lack of turn lanes. So what's really happening is, especially during peak times, people aren't able to get out of the through lane. So there's increased amounts of rear end crashes that are basically directly related to not being able to get out of that through lane, as well as right angle crashes directly related to turning movements. So adding these turn lanes will allow for separate deceleration and queuing areas separate from that through lane, which will help with safety as well as traffic flow, especially during sports events.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. We also had another question, just since my next slide is back to the new development there, the IOSU property, which we just touched on. But the question is, for the Everett-Waukegan intersection turning east on Everett from northbound Waukegan is tight. Can that be reviewed as well? Alderman Bushman, I believe we're looking at the entire intersection. Is that not correct?
Yeah, that is being worked on. And matter of fact, as part of the agreement we have with Mr. Iosu for his development, was to round that corner there to make it for a better turn lane. So that is definitely in the plans.
Thank you. So moving on, I think we should move up to, in our slide deck here, the new development senior cottages. And Alderman Bushman, if you'll touch on that project.
Just touch on it, just as more of a heads up. We're looking to develop senior cottages north of Everett, west of Telegraph. 12 additional senior cottages are being looked at here. We have existing senior cottages located a little bit to the north off of Conway Road there. And they've been quite successful, great demand. And so this is a development that still has ways to go, but we do expect it to be considered by the Plan Commission and the Building Review Board in the coming months. And by the way, this is property the city owns, so it will be a city development.
Thank you. Moving on to a very current discussion in our community is the athletic field improvements, the Deer Path Sports Complex. And I'd like to, we have a number of questions that have come in on the queue, so we will talk about that. I want to emphasize that this project is still very early stages of development, and this timeline here that's been put together by our city staff lays out where we stand in this process. So right now, it's preliminary, getting cost estimates, reviewing and researching all options from turf, natural grass, and what that entails, as well as if there's perhaps bathrooms put in or a concession stand. I will say I came from flag football tonight. My first grader was out there. It was a muddy, sloppy mess. We've had a lot of rain. And what I'm really excited about is that we are looking at improvements of some kind. So the Deer Path Sports Complex project won't necessarily be reviewed, I don't think, by the ESC Environmental Sustainability Committee. I mean, we're all members and sitting on the council. So we definitely we're definitely looking at all of the different options that are there, but I don't think it's going to come to our committee specifically at this time. What I'm encouraging everyone to do is stay engaged. There was a survey that was on the website. It was also put out on social media as well as in the e-blast to fill out. We want to hear from the community. We want to hear what's a priority to you. And based on the community recommendations in the master plan, that's from 2019, we're conducting these assessments now so we can get a recommendation for improvement. So right now we've had a presentation from city staff to the council at our workshop meeting in July. During that discussion, there was a consensus that something needs to be done. So out of one of the most highly prioritized amenities identified by the community is improvements there. And I can speak for myself. I'm sure Alderman Bushman too have been getting lots of engaging emails from residents on all sides of this particular project. And we're so happy that people are engaged. So stay tuned. There's lots more to come and opportunities for all of you to be involved in this process. And I think that's all we need to cover on that at this time. Moving on to the Lake Forest Library, just a quick touch-in. I actually happen to be at the library again today. With little kids, I find myself really taking advantage of their resources, either it's their crafts or they have, many of the schools have the accelerated reading programs, and you can check out books there to help your children on those quizzes and assessments. A few recent improvements at the library: faster and more reliable internet and Wi-Fi, refreshed foyer, new self-checkout services will be coming soon, and lots of different activities, both in person, hybrid. They even are doing story walks. So take advantage of this asset in our community, much like the beach and many of our other, the Parks and Rec. We have ELO, we have Ragdale, so many different, Gorton, different groups. Also stay in touch with the library. And with that, we'll bring it to our wonderful closure. Alderman Bushman, thank you so much for leading our discussion tonight and opening it up. I think now is time for us to hit on more of these questions. We aim for about, an end around 8:30. We got about 15 minutes. So I think to start it off, just in terms of priority here.
Yeah, Eileen, can I suggest that maybe we ask Jason to digest some of these questions, and I think he may be able to give a quick answer to some of them. And so, Jason, can we put you on the spot? This is Jason Wish, our city manager. We're finally getting to you, Jason.
Well, happy to be here, and very nice job by both of you. A lot of really important and I think positive information to share. So we do have some questions lined up. A couple maybe I'll just address that just came in reference to the athletic field improvement project, and specifically the survey, the pulse survey that was sent out. The questions were asking both why the survey could be filled out by non-residents, and noting that the survey allowed for repeat submissions. While that is true on the front end, through the platform we were using, the city is able to weed out duplicate responses or those by non-residents. So happy to address those very quickly. The question that came in early, and so people have been waiting patiently, is regarding, let's see here, the stoplight at the corner of 41 and Old Elm, if you're traveling eastbound, and why it has a perceived shortened time. And so I'm going to ask Public Works Superintendent Dan Martin to address that question.
Thank you. Good evening. Sure. So the stoplight at Old Elm and 41, just like at Wesley and 41 and 60 and 41, are all owned and controlled by IDOT. However, we did receive complaints about the eastbound traffic being shortened through the light interchange. So we have contacted IDOT. They did come out, and it seemed like they made the repair, but it has now gone and reoccurred. So we have reached out to them again, which probably indicates that they're have a short or something's wrong with the light controlling system that they're going to have to take a little bit more harder look at and in order to repair. But we will maintain and stay on that with IDOT to be sure they understand that it's still not functioning.
Dan, thank you very much. Appreciate all your effort and continuing to lean on them. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Jason?
Sure. So the next question is regarding a portion of Old Mill Road that does not have sidewalk, and the resident in question is expressing.
I think there's an alderman that lives close to this area.
Near and dear to someone's heart. So my suggestion would be to talk to our assistant city manager, Mike Strong. He is the one who can walk you through the process for looking at installation of new sidewalk. Either you can find his contact information on the city website, or if you want in the chat box here to provide us your contact information, we'd be happy to reach out to you as well.
Thank you. What else do we have?
And then, so we have a question asking whether the city is running a budget surplus this year. The short answer I can say is that we do appear to be trending in a positive direction, but I'm going to ask our finance director, Elizabeth Howell, if she'd like to comment with any additional specificity.
Thank you, City Manager Wisha. We are trending positively this year. I would note that the city has a longstanding tradition of budgeting conservatively when making revenue estimates as well as expense allocations. We track our actual revenues and expenses on a monthly basis and provide a monthly report to the City Council Finance Committee to let them know how we're trending compared to budget. And we're seeing significant increases in home rule sales tax as well as building permit revenue over budget projections this year. So those are the two notable positive trends we're seeing currently.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another question we have is asking about the law firm that represents the city of Lake Forest in general matters of litigation. The city's utilizes the services of Ansel Glink, which is one of the larger and more preeminent municipal law firms in the city of Chicago. And Julie Tappendorf fills in as the city attorney on most occasions, but they do have a pretty deep bench of specialized attorneys that jump in and help us on various matters depending on the nature of the issue. Another question we have is, and I think some of this was addressed by Alderman Weber in her comments on the Route 60 bike path grant project, but there is a question about the lack of east-west connections, and specifically whether the city is putting more thought into enhanced pedestrian crossings, bike paths, improved signage, etc. And I'm going to ask our community development director, Kathy Zerniak, to talk a little bit about the bike master plan that we have here in the city. Kathy?
Thank you. The bicycle master plan actually identified the need for east-west routes. Acknowledged that it's a real deficiency. Certainly crossing 41 is an issue. And we have limited, even for vehicular traffic, we have limited east-west streets. So it is an issue that's been identified. Certainly anytime we look at street improvements, new development, we're really looking at opportunities to add those east-west connections. Some of those connections are a bit roundabout, but you may have noticed that the hospital recently extended a sidewalk along the east side of Westmoreland out to Deer Path to really facilitate bicycles and pedestrians getting through the hospital campus and over to Eloa Farm and the north-south bike route. However, we do acknowledge that we need to make the connection on Deer Path because there isn't a sidewalk immediately to the east of the hospital. So that's just one example of the way we're really kind of incrementally extending bike paths and pedestrian paths. But certainly we are aware of the lack of east-west connections and need to continue to focus on that.
Great, thank you, Kathy. As long as I have you, before you leave the screen, there are a couple other questions that I think you might be well suited to address. The first is asking whether the proposed senior cottage project will be affordable housing.
Yes, the senior cottages, as I believe Alderman Bushman noted, the 5 senior cottages located on Conway Road really operate under a similar program. They are affordable, and the affordability is determined in part by the grants and tax credits that are obtained to support the project. Area median income, which I can't quote off the top of my head, but as we look at senior cottages, they may have eligibility criteria that are 80% of the area median income or 60%. This isn't Section 8 housing. It is not subsidized housing. The 5 senior cottage units on Conway Road, I believe, are just about 20 years old now, and they have been really in demand. They have been filled consistently from the time they were first offered. And the 12 units that are anticipated for the new development will operate in a similar way. Importantly, there is a hierarchy or a priority given to Lake Forest residents, parents of Lake Forest residents, people who used to live in Lake Forest and Lake Bluff as well. So the city does have identified target groups, and in this case, it will be seniors and Lake Forest residents or people associated with Lake Forest.
Kathy.
And then Kathy is, oh, sorry, Alderman Weber.
No, I was just saying thank you for explaining that more thoroughly.
And then Kathy, last question I see that you would be appropriate to address is asking what city officials are doing to promote more sales tax revenue or sales tax generating development rather than say medical office building.
As I mentioned earlier, the city is seeing some real increased interest in restaurants. Unlike many communities, Lake Forest actually has seen restaurants open during the pandemic or commit to opening. Le Colonial was mentioned earlier. If you've been by the former Market House structure, Le Colonial has essentially gutted the interior and is investing a significant amount of money in really remaking that interior and the building overall, which is pretty incredible for a restaurant to make that kind of a commitment to a community. During the pandemic, we also saw the Forrester Hotel and the Oaken Restaurant open. So the focus is really on restaurants. We have a number of discussions ongoing between landlords and potential tenants for some additional restaurants. Retail, as I'm sure most of you know, is more difficult right now. It is hard. It's just been difficult for retail, not only because of the pandemic, but also because of the increased online shopping. So the landlords in town are really looking for unique businesses who can really fill a need for this community or provide a product that really is unique and that people will essentially support their businesses. So ongoing efforts, and as a whole, the community is doing very well.
Jason, if I could interrupt and point out one of the questions that have come in related to stormwater projects, particularly in the fourth ward. And I do have something I do want to share. We didn't have any slide on it, but it always is difficult trying to prioritize, what stormwater project to be undertaken next, because we have had a climate change, and the amount of rainfall, the amount of storms that has increased over the passage of time. And maybe our infrastructure that was built 40, 50 years ago doesn't handle the requirements, the capacity that we need today. And I know I personally have had discussions with our residents on, and Eileen too, on the Estate Lane area, and also by Everett School in the pond area there, and the problems. The thing I wanted to say to our residents, again, we have to prioritize these things. And one of the important things we do in trying to prioritize is understand it's significant, what its impact is in terms of the number of folks and the type of impact. So if you do experience, and this is the point I wanted to make sure I get across, if you as a resident experience stormwater problems, notify the city, particularly if it's an incursion in your house, incursion in your basement, not only for them to understand the nature and the severity of the problem, but the city does an excellent job trying to help if there's something interim can be done or something else can be done. And I know personally, I had some two low standing areas. City came out and said, put in 2 French drains, and I did, and it's worked wonderfully. So, inform the city to the extent you're aware of flooding problems, their nature, their severity, and again, ask them if they can help in any way.
I think that's a great answer, Alderman Bushman. And if it would be helpful, I'm going to ask Byron to jump back on just to provide a quick response to what is the highest priority stormwater project that has been identified in the 4th Ward. Byron, do you want to answer that for us?
Yeah, good evening. Byron Coots, Superintendent of Engineering, back on. So we did have a stormwater master plan that was updated in 2019. So basically what happens with that is all of the storm sewers are modeled, and then it's put into a computer software program that basically prioritize different areas. So Burr Oak was the highest priority as of 2 years ago, which potentially will be addressed next year, as was already stated. Otherwise, the next 2 priorities, and as everyone knows, we're going through the budget process, so these haven't been formally adopted yet, but the next priorities from our stormwater plan would be Awani Road. And I'm just looking through the 50-page plan here. Awani Road, just south of Deer Path, as well as a section of Awani Lane. That's a potential design that we're looking at in the next few years. And then there's another priority. The next one would be Unwencia Road, or actually Poplar Road, just south of Unwencia. So basically, these priorities are determined, like I said, they're analyzed in this software, and it's basically a combination of the severity of the flooding as well as the benefits that can be made from these improvements. And that's kind of how these priorities are determined.
And I do think specific to the 4th Ward, perhaps the Estate Lane Storm Sewer Project ranks the highest. But I don't know if Byron or Public Works Director Thomas could confirm that.
Yeah, let's see if Mike's going to jump in.
Sure. Good evening. Actually, Telegraph Road. So between Old Mill up to I forget the name of the street now. I've got them all memorized, and that one I forgot. But they're along Telegraph Road. We all know that deep ditch line over
Wild Rose.
That has been identified as the next 4th Ward project. Estate Lane is an issue that I know our Superintendent of Public Works, Stan Martin, and our Water and Sewer Supervisor, Rich Volpe, visited and spoke with the residents. And that involves a lot more than just a straightforward city response to that. But the next 4th Ward will be the Telegraph Road, White Oak. There it is. Sorry.
Well, and if any residents have further questions, we can certainly take that offline and follow up to see where perhaps their neighborhood concerns are.
Thank you. So moving along, we still have a few questions here. One is in reference to the potential athletic field improvement project and whether that would go to the Environmental Sustainability Committee. I know Alderman Weber did touch on that. I'll maybe just add too that, you know, while the city council does have several subcommittees made up of aldermen, for projects of this magnitude and given the potential financial impacts, you know, it is a project of significant magnitude. I think the past practice and logical approach is to have a preliminary discussion with the full city council so that all 8 aldermen have the opportunity to weigh in. And at that point in time, if it is then referred to one of the subcommittees for further study and investigation, then that would be appropriate and that could happen. One of the things I will note is that part of the reason we want to engage in a significant public outreach and engagement process is to get a better sense from the public as to what priorities the city should be considering when looking at the various options that will be explored for potential improvements. And certainly on that list is environmental concerns. And we recognize for whatever option is considered that there are trade-offs to consider in terms of the potential impacts on the environment. I think Alderman Weber did a very nice job of highlighting some of the new initiatives that are underway by the city to further promote sustainability in our community. It is a high priority for the council, and I'm sure that'll be one of the factors that is discussed in greater detail as that project moves forward. Another question that has come in, when you seek grants, what do you do if you don't get them? And will you be seeking grants for athletic field improvements? So the short answer is that if we are unsuccessful in getting grants, that's when the city council, through its capital prioritization process, will make the determination if the project is important enough that we will go ahead and fund it internally, or whether direction is provided to staff to go out and seek out additional opportunities for grant funding. But one of the things that I know one of the aldermen touched on that we've really tried to emphasize is funding and completing design work for a lot of capital improvements so that our projects are in fact shovel ready. This does give us a leg up in a lot of grant applications. And so, you know, that's again been an area of emphasis for us. And I think we'll see that bear fruit for us in the future. Alderman Bushman, it looks like you wanted to jump in as well.
Just to add to that, you know, besides, you know, looking for funding through governmental sources, we've been very successful with private funding through, and I'll go back to the beach and the construction we had to do in light of the bluff failure. We did get participation from different foundation and support there, and that may be true for the athletic field also, where we can have private-public partnerships going forward.
Right. So the next question we have is regarding the potential presence of lead water pipes in Lake Forest, perhaps specific to our city-owned infrastructure. I'm going to ask Public Works Director Mike Thomas to answer that question.
Good evening again. The very quick answer with regards to the city's 150 plus miles of water main, the answer is no. None of that water main is made of lead materials. Of the approximately 7,000 water services, meaning the pipe that goes from the water main into your home, approximately 3% or about 210, 225, somewhere in there are lead services that we are confirming to make sure that in fact our records are correct. But the good news is no city pipes are lead, and we have a very small number of water services that are lead.
Yeah, I do see, Jason, we have our comment, I guess, more from Mike Adams, who was a former president of the Lake Forest Caucus. pushing the caucus just as we push the caucus. It's a great way to get the volunteers, both for the caucus itself and for our boards and commissions. And he points out the website to go to volunteer is www.lakeforestcaucus.com. So thanks, Mike, for the plug for the caucus. Jason?
Mike? And okay, we have, looks like one additional question asking about the, I guess, current nature of street lighting in the community, and noting that it is very dark in the evening, and whether the city has looked into this before. I'm going to ask maybe Community Development Director Kathy Zerniak to talk about sort of the general question about brightness of lights in the community, because this does come up quite frequently as a topic of discussion with plenty of opinions on both sides.
Thank you. Well, I'll start with saying streetlights, for the most part, are installed as part of new developments. So in recent years, you are seeing developments with streetlights going in. Those streetlights tend not to be the Cobra overhead bright lights. They tend to be more ornamental, and the lighting level is lower. But there is one of the most frequent complaints, interestingly enough, that we receive is about lighting. Neighbors complaining that lights are too bright, or neighbors' lights are not shielded. So it's really a balance, and it's almost neighborhood specific. I think probably Dan Martin can speak to the work we're doing right now to transition our gas lights, which isn't changing necessarily the lighting levels, but in some cases those gas lights weren't working very well. But it really is a community debate, and I guess I would ask if Dan Martin has anything he'd like to add to those comments.
I think you hit it right on. It's been a challenge to kind of weigh out the benefits of the residents that come to us that are complaining that it's too bright, and then coming and basically saying it's too dark. So it's us trying to basically strike a balance. I think they weigh a little bit more in favor of having it a little more dark, more of the dark city. However, we are converting the gas lights, as Kathy had mentioned. We started that process out in the 4th Ward back in 2020 or 2018, I believe, and converted 34 gas lights to LED, and that does help a little bit as far as bringing more of a consistent illumination. The gas lights would get dirty and then dim down, which the LED, we were able to provide a little bit brighter light in that area. So we will continue to do that, and I believe 2024 we'll finish up the 4th Ward with another 18 lights or so. That's pretty much what Director Zerniak has talked about. It's a little bit different lighting intensities and infrastructure depending on the neighborhood that you're in and when that neighborhood was developed. So.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Kathy. I'll add one comment there. Rather than calling it dark lighting, I like to use the word that we use subdued ambiance lighting for our city streets. So it's all how you describe it. Jason, did I see it correctly that I think we've gone through all the questions besides overrunning our time by 10 minutes?
Yes, at this time, that concludes all of the questions that have been submitted. So I'll be happy to turn it back over to the two of you.
Well, before I turn it back to Eileen, I just personally want to thank everyone who participated, asked the questions. Hopefully we answered as best we can your questions, but keep in mind the communications are still open. Eileen, do you want to make your last final comments and close us out?
Sure. It's a pleasure serving all of you, and I look forward to hopefully a few more years of this, and the open door and open email, open phone. So feel free to reach out anytime.
And Eileen, I thought you'd say see you next year with the emphasis on C, right?
Yes, see you next year. I can't wait. Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay, thank you. We'll conclude the meeting.
Good night.